from a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA. This is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to prevent mistaking your favorite soothing skin cream with Tabasco. And now, the podcast host who's got the hot sauce that creeps up on you, not unlike a raccoon at the garbage can, Pete Dominic!
Hey, yes, indeedly do. Thank you, Pete Co. And hopefully you have not had that happen because, boy, does that scare the poop out of you, folks. Welcome to the show. I have two excellent guests joining me today. Dr. Ruth Ben-Ghiat is back. Y'all know her. You love her. We had an awesome conversation. And you know who else is back? It's Maura Quint, back from Australia. We last talked to her before Christmas. Happy to welcome her back to the conversation and to the country. Hear about her trip, thoughts on the news, and more with Maura coming up. I hope that you had a great weekend. I went up and got the dog. Indy is back in the shed with me back home, and I had a great visit with my parents. Stayed overnight, helped them out a little bit with some stuff. Then I drove down to my big brother's house in the Catskills and helped him beat down a giant pile of firewood, stacked that up, and we had dinner together. Great catching up with him, helping him out, and it felt great to be able to do some nice things for the people that matter most to me in my life, my parents and my brother. So nice, in fact, it made me want to do a lot more of that, just because what are brothers for? What are sons for, if not to help out as much as you can, you know? So I felt good about that. Made me feel purposeful and alive. And also, now my parents don't have a hole in the side of their house from a woodpecker. What did you do this weekend? Did you get after it? Did you get outside? Did you spend time with people you love? Did you watch some shows? Eat some things? See some people? Or not? Whatever. Hope you had a good weekend. Glad to have you back here listening to the show. Great shows planned already for this week. My intern, Odessa, is starting this week. If you were at the Hangout, if you're a paid subscriber on Thursday night, you got to meet her. She's really cool, really smart, and really excited to work with me, even though many of you at the Hangout tried to convince her, tried to warn her. No, nothing to be scared of. It's going to be a great experience. I'm really psyched to have the help, as well as be able to mentor young people. Love doing that, so that's a great thing this week. And because I had so many dudes last week, I'm trying to limit the dudes this week. One of the first things I'm going to ask Odessa is to try to help me find some new great female guests. Not that we don't have a lot of regulars that we love that we'll continue to talk to, but looking for some ladies, some smart ladies to join the show as always. So email me your ideas, people I haven't had on in a while, maybe someone that's never been on. Hey, maybe you. Brilliant women listening to this show, I should definitely be having on and having conversations with and talking about the great things that you're doing in your lives. Someone you'd like to hear from. Again, standupwithpete@gmail.com. This week's a ladies only. No, there's going to be some dudes as always. I've got Jonathan Alter on Tuesday. I also am going to be talking to Tony Hillary of Harlem Grown, which is this amazing nonprofit that Tony started, Urban Gardens in New York City. It's an amazing story, amazing organization. Tony Hillary is going to join me as well this week. And we'll see who else. Also, Friday night, if you're in southeastern Pennsylvania between Philadelphia and Allentown, is Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And that is where you will find me headlining Soul Joel's Comedy Club. Tickets in the show links. If you want to come to that, I'd love to see you there. That's Friday, the 13th of January. Ooh, should be a scary, funny show. What? Well, before I get to my guest, just wanted to mention this wild weekend in news. Of course, the House of Representatives has a new speaker just past midnight Saturday morning. Were you watching? The 15th ballot following a period of really raucous, divisive, and even physically charged debate between the Republican House majority and a group of Republican holdouts. The week-long process to elect a speaker seemed to cast doubt on the ability of the GOP to effectively govern in Congress, writes the Associated Press. You think? Did you see the guy grab the other guy by the face, the one with the wig? I'm obsessed with that. And now the MAGA extremists are plotting to hold the economy hostage, and Kevin McCarthy promised to help them. So looking forward to that self-inflicted wound and manufactured controversy. Back on Earth One and a normal political party, President Biden commemorated, honored the January 6th police officers and a 2-year anniversary of the attack. You saw that ceremony, maybe some excerpts from the White House on Friday. Actually, let's listen to about a minute clip of President Biden. I thought this is pretty good from Friday's ceremony I just talked about.
And as we all watched, this is the irony of it all America watched it on television and saw it repeated and repeated. In the past months, we've heard you testify to the nation about what happened that day, what you were thinking of at the time it was happening, what you're thinking now, the threats, the violence, the savageness of what happened, the trauma, all real. And it's not exaggeration to say America owes you all. I really mean this. A debt of gratitude, one we can never fully repay unless we live up to what you did. Live up to what you did.
All right, President Biden at the ceremony commemorating January 6th on Friday. And the big story, probably the biggest story over the weekend, was what happened on Sunday in Brazil, where they basically copied what happened here on January 6th. And it's not to say that what happened here in America on January 6th 2 years ago was the first time anything like that happened in the world. Of course, that kind of things happened around the world throughout human history. People ransacking the king's castle all the way up to Capitol buildings around the world. But it's certainly the first time something like that had happened in America. The Capitol wasn't even breached during the Civil War, I like to hear historians always mention. But still, it was haunting. If you saw any of the images or heard or read about what happened in Brazil on Sunday, it was just haunting how similar it was to what we saw here. I mean, they had outfits, they had their Brazilian jerseys, they were dressed in support of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who apparently is in Florida signing autographs in a U.S. men's national jersey I saw over the weekend, which is super weird. But these protesters, these fascists, they breached security barriers that were set up by the armed forces, gained access to key buildings for three branches of government, including the congressional building, Supreme Court, and the presidential palace. And the footage I saw showed these huge crowds in the capital, Brasilia, walking up a ramp that leads to the congressional building where they had reached the green room, which is located outside the lower house of Congress's chamber. And the interim Senate president told all of this to CNN Brazil. That's where I'm getting it from. Other outlets showed Bolsonaro supporters entering the Supreme Court and the presidential palace, where CNN Brazil showed the arrivals of anti-riot police and Brazilian armed forces. And then inside, protesters were using furniture to build barricades and prevent police from entering. And so just crazy what we saw playing out yesterday in Brazil and how similar it was, of course, to what happened here in the U.S. And you definitely saw a lot of people here in America, American Twitter, blaming the Trump administration and the MAGA movement for inspiring them, saying, here's Congressman Raul Grijalva. There you go. Nailed it. He says the insurrection in Brazil can be directly tied to Trump and the Republicans' emboldening of fascism and violent extremism. Any Republican member who condemns this but refuses to accept the results of the 2020 election is a hypocrite. I condemn this brazen attack on democracy. Lawrence Tribe failing thus far to make Trump pay any price for his central role in fomenting the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. No doubt encouraged, if it didn't directly cause this violent attack on Brazil's government. Only full accountability can stem the virus of violence. And Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who I talked to before this happened, tweeted last night, I read about coups and authoritarianism and how strongmen never give up. Brazil's events are why I warn the GOP is unrepentant about January 6th and would do it again tomorrow. Every journalist who speaks to a Republican politician and does not ask on camera about support for January 6th is normalizing it. And that got a lot of attention on Twitter. And here is on MSNBC last night, Mehdi Hassan and Ayman Mohyeldin discussing America and Republicans' role in the violence and rioting in Brazil yesterday.
Some chaotic scenes out of that country today, an armed attack, and a violent attack, I should say, on the Congress, on the Supreme Court, protesters outside the presidential palace. And I feel like it's doubly embarrassing for us in the United States because, number one, as Joe Walsh pointed out on the show at the start, everyone looks to America, and they saw what happened on January the 6th. And the images out of Brazil are very much January the 6th-like. And number two, the Brazilians actually have arrested, I believe, more than 400 people today, which is not what we did on January the 6th. We allowed the insurrectionists to just go home. So I feel like it's doubly embarrassing watching these scenes, chaotic scenes out of Brazil today.
And not only that, look, I think you can look at what is happening in Brazil and see firsthand the motivation, the inspiration from what played out here on January the 6th and how it has played out and spread to countries like Brazil. Yep. But you know what's more troubling, Mehdi, is the reaction that we've seen from our own politicians to what is happening in Brazil. This is a major international crisis. The White House has come out condemning this violence. The president, the secretary of state, the national security advisor, Democratic officials have all said they are watching the situation closely, condemn it, and look forward to working with the duly elected president of Brazil, Lula. You know who we haven't heard from? It's not a surprise. A lot of the Republicans, many of whom tacitly supported and explicitly supported our own insurrection that happened in this country. So I think it's duly shameful what you outlined, but also what our own Republican officials here in this country are doing this evening as we watch this democracy, the largest democracy in South America, go through this turmoil.
All right. Well, I'm sure we won't be hearing the end of that. Crazy story to see them doing just exactly what happened here. The way they were sitting in like the speaker's chair and walking around aimlessly inside the Capitol building as if they'd been there for the first time in their lives, which probably they were. It's just terrible, the parallels that we're seeing play out down there. The president, for his part, also went to the U.S.-Mexico border, and then he's going on to Mexico City for the first time as president. So I'm sure that'll quiet all the demands for him going down to the border, but got a firsthand look at the issue that Republicans love to use to raise money and get ratings. It's obviously a serious issue. It's immigration, but the hyperbolic conversation, dehumanizing conversation, and the lack of a comprehensive immigration reform obviously is just so much of what the problem is. President Biden spent a few hours in El Paso and met with border officials, migrant support groups as well, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that trip as he heads on to Mexico City. And how about this yesterday? It was Sunday, so Sunday football, and I don't talk sports. It's not a sports podcast, obviously, but I do like the positive energy that sports can bring, even the gladiator sport of football. Of course, Buffalo Bills' Damar Hamlin had a heart attack on the field. The entire nation watched it. It's one of the most watched sporting moments probably all year long. Well, the year's just begun and the year's past. But anyway, he's had this remarkable recovery, something to be joyous about, something to be happy about, to unify people about, in my mind. And so he's had his breathing tube removed, and he's continued to talk and communicate with his teammates and so on. But on Sunday, I know, just bear with me here, on Sunday, and the first play of the game, at the kick, even if you don't know anything or care anything about football, even if you hate football, I think this moment, it's got to make you melt a little bit, right? At the kickoff, the first play of the game, the Bills player, the receiver, he caught the kickoff and he took it all the way down the field for a touchdown. The opening play in Buffalo. And I'm going to play the sound because it made me so happy. Here's the crowd at Orchard Park, New York, going wild. Here's CBS announcer Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, his partner, doing their best to comment and then shut up during this amazing moment. Bills receiver Nyheim Hines returned the opening kickoff 96 yards against the New England Patriots. Listen, here's how this last 30 seconds of it sounded.
We're underway as New England decided to defer after winning the toss. And here's Hines on the run back, breaking a tackle and taking it past midfield. And down the sideline he goes. This is storybook. An opening kickoff return for Damar Hamlin. And this place is absolutely going wild.
Oh, you just said this is storybook. This is almost fate. I just can't believe what just happened. Josh Allen, the same thing. 6 days removed from this incredible scene that we saw with the bass player down in Cincinnati, and now
an incredible script. You can't make it up.
Right? It is almost
fate.
like it was going to happen. And you know that wave of emotion, sometimes it hits, it can go either way. What a start.
All right, I just thought that was cool, so I played it for you. All right, well, listen, no more clips, no more news, plenty of things to say. I'm sure you heard a lot, but I took up already 15 minutes of your time just breaking it down. So let's get to my guest, shall we? I think you're going to love Ruth Ben-Ghiat, as always. She's so, so great. Coming up, Maura, Quint, and I talk about her trip to Australia, some discoveries she's made about what she's looking for in a relationship that I think are helpful for everybody. And, of course, we get a reaction on the news. But first, it's been way too long since I caught up with Dr. Ruth Ben-Ghiat. We had a great conversation at the end of last week that I'm going to share with you now. And then after I pressed stop, she was so thoughtful and kind and generous to me about how I've kind of helped her just a little bit, and it was just really nice. And we talked for a long time about a lot of things, and she's just a very, very cool woman, as well as an obviously brilliant academic and author, and someone who has predicted so many of the things that have happened just simply based on her understanding and profile of the past. If you're not already supporting her with a paid subscription to Lucid, her newsletter, then definitely check it out. I highly recommend it. I'm a paid subscriber. Check out lucid.substack.com right now. Tell her I sent you. Oh, and the great Gareth Sever actually wrote a jingle for Dr. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, and I'll play that, and then we'll go right into the interview. Gareth Sever of bucketsandboards.com. Take it away.
Ruth Ben-Ghiat tells you all the things you want to know about impending authoritarian rules. She'll take you to school. She won't let you get caught off guard. Shows how fascist strongmen are highly effective blowhards. Knows that the past comes back around fast, but don't lose hope. So many ways to oppose those corrupt, ultra-violent, hyper-masculine, power-hungry fools. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, she's so cool.
Oh my God, he's so good. And if only I had remembered to play that for Ruth Ben-Ghiat. Don't worry, Gareth, everybody. She'll be back. I'm sorry. Here we go. Thank you very much for joining me. You're in so much demand. You're everywhere.
That's not a good sign for our politics, but yes, it's true right now.
I think I agree with that, sadly. But I think it's also, isn't it a sign to some extent about your credibility? I think one of the most interesting things is where you have been, certainly on Trump and America and the rise of authoritarianism and fascism, in terms of the kind of the way that you were talking, how you framed it, and some of the predictions that you made, including that Donald Trump was not going to go quietly. You said that. He didn't. January 6th happened, and a lot of your colleagues and people in the academy started to say, you know what, she was right. We can now call this fascism. Isn't that fair to say, characterize it that way?
Yeah, I think, you know, having studied these people and having written about Trump, Strongman was the first book to include Trump in this kind of authoritarian history, and some people didn't like that, but he has the same personality, and it was obvious to me that they simply can't give up power. It's not only an ego thing, it's also that they fear prosecution because they're so corrupt and there's secrets coming out. So yeah, and then the whole fascism framework, you know, now we have a neo-fascist prime minister in Italy, and the links between the GOP and the far right international with Orban and Meloni is very connected to the GOP. So I think I've been trying to shift the perception or the paradigm in which we see American politics, or right-wing American politics, and see it as connected to these other things. And that wasn't a natural thing for Americans to embrace before.
On the prime minister there in Italy, is it fair to say that electing a female, this is the first female prime minister in Italy, so a lot of people want to celebrate that, but as someone who supports feminist ideas, I don't think a woman being elected is a good thing if she's going to uphold kind of men's rights, patriarchy, and not be on the right side of gender equity. Is that a fair
opinion to have, do you think?
Yes, and this isn't my term, it's two female political scientists, but there's a phenomenon called gender washing. And that's when, and it used to be the person people would cite was Marine Le Pen in France. So you have these new far-right leaders, also Katalin Novak, who was Minister of Family in Hungary, and now she's president of Hungary, and you have Meloni, and they all come out saying, oh, we stand with women, we're powerful women, but what they're doing is taking women's rights away. And so even Meloni, if you look at what her party did before she came to power, they were, making abortion rights and reproductive rights more difficult to access. They were against LGBTQ rights. And so in general, the kind of, gender and sexuality, they have a very reactionary stance. So it's very important to not think just because they're women, they're not going to be upholding this patriarchal frame. And Meloni, she's very tough. And she's interesting because she was a hardcore fascist militant from 15 years old.
Yeah.
And she became the head of the youth wing of the neo-fascist party. And that's not easy to do. And her mentor is like Berlusconi, but also Mussolini. And the way I'm going to write about this, the way she speaks and the way she looks at, through the camera, there's something very fascist about this.
Yeah, your book goes into all of the history of, even before, I remember reading in your book, before there was audio and film. So Mussolini, would study, he realized how important his gesticulation would be to communicate. And that's not an old bit. Like, people are still doing that bit. Authoritarians around the world still gesticulating.
Well, one thing that they do very skillfully, and this was something I didn't realize till I did the research for strongmen. Many of the ones who were most successful had a background in journalism or mass communications or entertainment, like Berlusconi owned TV networks. Obviously, Trump was a reality president. And they know how to communicate in very dynamic ways. They communicate in ways that seem new and surprising to the public. They have slogans. Mussolini had a lot of slogans. He was a really, really good communicator and journalist. They're also performers. They act well and they simulate emotion. So when Trump came on, to the American scene, and he starts talking, saying, I love you, I care about you. And I was like, this is not good.
Yeah.
And people fall for it because Democrats don't, Biden is more emotionally expressive than most, but Democrats with a small d don't use emotion in the same way. And so they don't actually build those fervent bonds of loyalty the way that authoritarians do.
Yeah, Obama did.
Obama had slogans. And in fact, when recently, before the midterms, he was doing some speeches again and having more of a public profile. And it was so interesting to watch him and the crowd responding to him in ways we haven't seen with other Democrats recently. And we need that. If we're going to beat the right, we need somebody who's dynamic and a superb communicator and emotional, or knows how to manage emotion. And I'm looking to see who that could be.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. As a performer myself, it's something I think a tremendous amount about, whether it's hosting this podcast, doing stand-up comedy, speaking, whatever it is. It obviously matters just to simply keep people's attention. If you want to get a message across, if that message is going to be a good and helpful one, especially. And I think it's fair to say that Volodymyr Zelensky is an excellent communicator that way.
Amazing. And he speaks not at people, he speaks to them. He uses emotion. He has an ability to, even the way he moves his body and his choice to wear kind of combat clothes. And all of this is very authentic, actually.
He was being criticized, right? And then someone shared on social media Winston Churchill.
Yes, another good communicator. Yeah. And the fact that Zelensky has managed, I mean, we can't even imagine sitting here in the comfort of our homes this situation of the hardship and the horror that Ukrainians suffer, and the fact that he's like made for this moment, because it's very important to keep people's hope up and keep people fighting and not lose resolve. And his communication skills and his authenticity have been one reason he's been able to do that. Is like, whether you believe in God or fate, whatever force has placed him in the position that he needs to be at this moment for his nation.
To some extent, I believe that if you follow the recent history and the revolution there in Ukraine, you know exactly what put him in that place. And it was the people. It was humanity. It was passion. It was anti-corruption. It was wanting someone who wasn't beholden to Russia. And this is the guy that they chose. I mean, I know that election of him wasn't necessarily perfect. But let me ask you about Putin, because we're talking about Ukraine. You've written a lot, obviously, about him. He is a central figure in your study, in your writing, in your speaking. And he is getting his ass kicked. And I don't know if that makes him more dangerous. I hate to simplify it all so much. If it makes him more dangerous or weaker. But when you see that hundreds of men were killed in their barracks the other night by Ukrainian rockets and died for what? I guess his ego. You have to wonder if at some point Russian public opinion changes. But you also have to ask, you know, how their media is so censored and focused, if people even hear or see about this. But what do you see, if anything, changing or happening with Putin in Russia?
So when within days of the war starting, I wrote an op-ed 2 days after it started for MSNBC, saying that this was not going to go well for Putin, because it was classic what I analyzed in the endings chapter of Strongmen, autocratic backfire. When somebody has had so much power for so long that they grow. They have a megalomania, and they grow grandiose aspirations. And I think that Putin realized that he had reached his peak, and maybe he was ill, maybe he's not ill, but he realized he's reached his peak, and he wanted to kind of secure his legacy. But he did it in a way, because by then he'd been in power for so long, he didn't have any critics around him. Anybody who criticizes him falls out of a window. So we know now, but I intuited that he didn't consult with, he didn't game out the sanctions with economic experts. He didn't consult with his military very much. He did this in an autocratic way. And so I predicted, like 2 days after this started, that there was no way this was going to go well, because it was conceived in this autocratic manner. And the other thing is, which I saw coming, is that it just takes a very long time. You have what's called elite defection, where, it's happened in the military, where they lost more generals in the first months than in all of World War II. And this is a huge deal also geopolitically, because the grand Russian military, which was so feared, has been revealed to be a bit of a sham. So military, as we see, people keep falling out of windows and going into the hospital, never emerging. So it's very dangerous to criticize him, but it's inevitable that financial and military elites are going to start peeling off if this continues. And that leaves Putin very vulnerable. That does make him, as you raised, that makes him more dangerous, because there is no scenario in which he just backs down. There's no off-ramp for autocrat. But I think that's what we can look forward to this coming year if this goes on.
Yeah, well, you've been pretty accurate so far with these predictions. And, a lot of it is obviously because you've seen it before and you've studied it as much as any scholar for most of your career. Let me come back home here to the U.S. and I'll work my way back to January 6th, because I think that's an important date. And obviously the committee's investigation, the appointment of the special prosecutor. But I really wanted to ask you what you think of what is happening today. You tweeted about the disarray in the Republican Party trying to find a speaker. You wrote, "Today's spectacle is what happens when you give up compromise, cooperation, and solidarity in politics. This party, now wedded to authoritarian methods, can no longer manage democratic procedures." I don't really know what that sentence means.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too highbrow for me. I mean, I see what you're saying, but like they can't. I guess, what are you saying based on history? Like, you've seen this before?
Well, I mean, I see the GOP as having transformed itself under, this is what Trump did. He was an autocratic leader. He imposed authoritarian party discipline, so you couldn't have any dissent. And he also used this autocratic trick called divide and rule, where you set everybody against each other by saying that loyalty to the leader is all that counts. So what we're seeing now, where they simply can't unify, it comes out of this, that they've been taught for years under Trump, even if some of them don't care about him anymore. Their political culture has changed so that they cannot unify. And remember the rhino phenomenon, where Eric Greitens was running for office, and he said that we should hunt down rhinos. So this is a party that is profoundly fractured because it has this extremist wing, but also because Trump said you shouldn't have any solidarity among yourselves. You are only loyal to me, the leader, and it's so familiar to me. And that's why we got into a situation which this should be mentioned every single day, that Republicans wanted to kill Pence, not Democrats. It was Republicans. So this whole circus going on here is a natural outgrowth of this. And when I say they can't manage democratic procedure, they have gone out of democracy. They're not interested in compromise, collaboration. They don't even understand that anymore. And so they simply can't get it together to follow a normal procedure that you do in a democracy. If this were Putin's Russia, it would be so much easier. They just tell you who it is. They can't do this anymore. They're not equipped anymore.
You have said that the Republican Party is now an authoritarian party. And to say, Rhino stands for Republican in name only. Well, what is a Republican? No one knows what that means anymore. It doesn't mean keeping Russia in check. It doesn't mean keeping the deficit low. It doesn't mean anything. All those policies, there isn't really a policy platform. They didn't even put a platform forward. It's just a cult of personality, this kind of MAGA ideology, and kind of what you're describing in a higher brow way that I'm saying. But that's what you're saying, right? That they're no longer a party of ideas, of ideals. That's
right. Exactly. And in fact, we're on the same wavelength. So I retweeted this morning an essay I had done, because I'm always too early with things. An essay I did in November 2021 for my newsletter, Lucid, called The GOP is Destroying Politics, Lies and Violence Are All That It Has Left, about nihilism, how they don't believe anything. There's no values anymore. And I retweeted it today because it involved AOC and Paul Gosar after he circulated this video that was violent, that included violent images of her. Right. And they've been in the news yesterday that they were consulting. They were chatting. Yes, they were chatting. So I thought but the point was less them than the fact that it was predictable, at least to me, that this party was being hollowed out of any values. And that's, again, goes back to Trump and loyalty. All Trump cares about, he has no values. He'll partner with the Chinese, with the Russians, with North Korea. He just doesn't care. And his values have become the party's values, meaning they don't have any anymore.
Exactly. I mean, I guess if they have any value, it is to a commitment to a culture war, which is specifically a reaction to issues around gender equity, gender fluidity, the changing nature of the way that we see gender in our society. That, if anything, is something they overwhelmingly, this kind of quote, what they call anti-wokeness. It's easier to call it simpler things like white supremacy or racism or patriarchy. But to be really specific to the times, what you hear from Ron DeSantis and Tucker Carlson on a regular basis in a loop is so much about those abortion, obviously. Is that fair to say that that's their ideology?
That's part of their ideology. I mean, that's a core part of it. But they also use that as a distraction, meaning it's serious in its own right. I don't even like the term culture war anymore because there are real, live, political, violent consequences of hatred toward trans people, toward gay people. And I know we all use the word culture war, but...
Or they're just a removal of rights. And even if you're a victim of violence, if you lose your health care right as a woman, that's pretty violent.
So it is one of the central things, but it's important and it's central what I've been trying to do is point out that the GOP is fully in sync with Orban's Hungary, with Putin's Russia, and all these foreign countries which have the same battles. In fact, Meloni said right before the election, where she was elected, she told the Washington Post that she sees the GOP as a kindred spirit, and their battles are the same. This is a neo-fascist party. It's the same as the GOP in focusing on these things. So we always have to remember, the context for it never stops with one group. You take away rights from LGBTQ people, and then it continues on. And what we're going to see now, 2023, is a whole onslaught. You're going to hear about commies 24/7. It's going to be all about rooting out communists and pedophiles, and this is also a Kremlin playbook. So it's important, but it's also, in a way, a distraction unless we keep present the bigger frame of trying to destroy democracy.
How important, and I'm sure I know you can make a historical parallel in different ways, but was the January 6th committee hearings, the way they were presented, how they were conducted, the witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson, how important was that investigation and the way it was so publicly presented to the American people? And how was that, if anything, different from what we've seen in history?
I can't really compare it to what we see in history because some of the major investigations with testimonials often happened after a regime was over. And here we're kind of in the middle of it. But as someone who was interviewed by the January 6th committee, the same people who interviewed William Barr interviewed me the second time.
Oh, I don't think I realized that. I watched pretty closely. Wow.
I wasn't in a televised interview. It was
Why did they want to talk to you?
Because they did their job so well as an expert on coups,
right,
as an expert on Trump cultivating violence in his followers, which very much leads into cultivating extremists. And I wrote a report for the committee about this. And this was I would say, the biggest honor of my career.
Wow.
And so I can tell you that the fact that they had the same people interviewing me, a small fish, and William Barr, which I didn't know until the first night of the hearings. I sat, down to watch it on TV like everybody else. And I saw these two men, and I was like, I yelled to my daughter. I was like, those are the guys who interviewed me. Oh my God. Means they didn't, quote, send the intern to interview lesser people.
Right.
And that tells you something about their integrity. And I think the presentation they did with the visuals and the integrity of the witnesses, like Cassidy Hutchinson and also the Capitol Police officers, it was incredible. And they were very smart to have so many Republicans and law enforcement people testifying. So I think it was beautifully done. It was a masterwork, really. And this is as someone who studies political film as well as, democracy.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. There was some criticism at the beginning when they talked about that they had hired television producers to help produce the public. And I was like, no, that's exactly what they need to be doing. That sounds like, they have to explain to the American public as well as they can what had happened. And I thought they did an excellent job of that. Now we've got a special prosecutor. And what do you think about where we're at? Where are we in this time frame of rising new age authoritarianism in the U.S. at least?
I mean, we're at this really critical moment because on the one hand, the midterms kind of are a snapshot, right? On the one hand, and we justly celebrated this. Yeah. This was an election full of historic firsts that made government into something that reflects who we actually are, and not some white supremacist fantasy. I mean, over 90 Muslims were elected. We have the first openly lesbian governors. On and on, like historic first for Black people, and so. This, of course, this is a testament to who we are, and young people voted in very large numbers. on the other hand, so you have a House that's 1/3 election deniers. And so if we think about somebody who's been in the news, George Santos, who's, a serial liar and a fraudster, well, he's simply fitting into a party that its identity now is about the big lie and about election denial, which is a form of fraud. I studied corruption. I added a corruption chapter to Strongmen, and I didn't know as much about corruption as I did about the other things, propaganda, machismo. And it was essential because this is how these autocratic parties operate. So George Santos he embodies the methods of this party. And we're not talking about that enough. Even now, when people are covering the House Speaker debacle, it's very important to keep, every time, that's why I tweeted yesterday, they mentioned Chip Roy. I'm like, Chip Roy was texting, until January 6th, trying to overthrow the government. These people are criminals. They're fraudsters. They're propagandists. And so George Santos is simply a reflection of who the GOP is today.
Yeah, he had a tough day yesterday. I haven't caught up with him today, but I watched a video of a man sitting alone for 2 minutes, and I was thoroughly entertained the entire time.
He also looked really bored. And this was interesting to me. Because he has, just like Trump, never had the slightest interest in governing.
Right.
This person is not interested in governing. He wants the prestige, the protection of having, Congress status, and he has no interest. This will be like George Santos, the congressman. So we'll see.
I really like, the last thing I want to do is sell Lucid, because I really like your newsletter. I'm a paid subscriber. I think it's a little bit different than what a lot of other people are doing. But yet, it's like, why are you doing this? As I prepared for today's interview, and we've talked several times, gotten to know each other a bit, but you are in such high demand for everybody. Everybody wants to talk to you, and rightfully so. You can write for a number of different outlets. Why are you doing, what have you learned from doing Lucid and the community of subscribers that I know that you meet up with them like I do with folks. And I think that's really, really cool. Why are you doing this? What are you getting out of it?
It's really it's developed into this community, and it's my way of serving people and helping them to understand in a more personal way. And as you know, the kind of pieces that you can do, you have more freedom.
Yep.
And especially if I'm a historian also writing about contemporary things, I write about America, but I also write about global things. It's been very freeing, and many people who have found this who started newsletters. But I have to credit you so I have one of the major components of it is the weekly live Q&As with subscribers. And this is what's allowed this kind of community to form.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about doing it, I sat in on a few of yours, and I saw how much, also this is because of your skill and your way of relating to people. I saw how dynamic and also just lovely these occasions can be. And that's what convinced me to start this as a part of Lucid.
So great. Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. I mean, you're so well suited. It really is a service because you're just so educated and such a great communicator and so passionate about this stuff that, you really kind of have to be doing this for us. You're kind of a treasure in that way. And so it's really valuable. I'm so glad that you are doing that. I love it. I got to show up at one of yours as well.
I would love to have you as a guest. I have guests every so often.
Well, if you ever want a guest interviewer, I'll just ask you questions. I don't know how much I could have
that would be fun
for your audience. Other than, the thing that I've taught you a couple times is how important it is to pay attention to what's happening locally. Because, I think we use the term fascism. We can use it a lot of different terminology in different places, different times, but we don't use it enough locally, things that happen to you locally, local kind of fascist techniques and tactics. You can call them that. I'll call them that. I basically had a horse head show up in my bed. Not quite that, but I mean, it was like the people from the government that someone called a fraudulent calumny. I've talked about this a little bit, but like that stuff is happening locally, and I don't want to scare anybody away from being engaged. I mean, I'm a pretty loudmouth guy. There's a lot of different ways you can be involved, but I just think so I guess that's my last question to you. How important is it to pay attention to what's happening locally with your local fascists?
It's key because, as I always like to say, fascism started in Italy as a decentralized militia movement, and they acted locally. It prepared for 2.5 years. They kind of they did terror tactics locally. They took over town councils. They trashed trade union headquarters. They did all of this locally, and they conquered many cities. And only after that did Mussolini stage his march on Rome. And so the local is very important. It's also part of American right-wing strategy, and this is Bannon's supposed, precinct strategy, where you take over town hall, town halls, you take over school boards. Yep. And they've been highly successful at doing this and inserting extremists who work locally. And so now we have actual oath keepers and Proud Boys who are serving locally. And this pushes out other people and makes this climate of intimidation. So this is exactly how fascism works.
Yeah. So stand together, stand up against them, and don't look the other way. Thank you so much for joining me again. As always, great to catch up with you, and hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
All right, there you go. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, and thank you, Gareth Sever, again for the intro. And Ruth, thank you very much for joining us. Go subscribe to her newsletter, lucid.substack.com right this second. What are you waiting for? Go subscribe. Sorry about my microphone. Did you notice? Yeah, I took the wrong feed, and there's no way for me to go back and edit the right feed in. So I hope it wasn't too annoying. It was mostly her who you want to hear, my guest who you want to hear anyway, right? So I thought that was great. All right, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, thank you very much. And now it's time to get to my conversation with the great Maura Quint, but I do want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast. That's my live read. Subscribe to this podcast right now. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic or standupwithpete.com. If you can't remember that, that'll take you there, and you can become a paid subscriber and a member of our community, which continues to grow despite how many millions of podcasts there are out there. Very excited for 2023 and all the exciting things that we're going to be doing here on this podcast. If you have ideas, send them my way. If you want to be a part of the Street Team, you can. The Street Team is just a bunch of listeners that work together to promote and build the podcast and the community along with it, as well as leverage it and try to take advantage of all the things that we have to offer each other, from friendship to advice on how to clean your chimney, whatever it is. Standupwithpete.com right now. Okay, let's get to my good friend Maura Quint, who's just back from Australia, where she went for 10 days. We had a lot to catch up on, and that's exactly what we did. You can find her on all the social media platforms, Instagram, and now TikTok and Twitter, at Behind Your Back, at Maura Quint. All the links are in the show notes. She's a very respected writer. She works for Americans for Tax Fairness.org. She's a sought-after guest on podcasts and all kinds of other shows. An amazing writer, and we are very happy and flattered and honored that she joins us here on Stand Up almost every Monday. Let's do it with Maura Quint right now.
All right. There she is, back from Down Under. We're going to talk all about your trip to the Southern Hemisphere. I'm glad you are back safely and back here with me talking, because we always love to start our week with you and talk to you. And before we get to your trip, your crazy, amazing trip to Australia, Maura, I do want to talk with you about a little bit about the news and the speakers fight, which you did catch a little of and talk a little about already. Hi, thank you.
Hi, it was impossible to miss, and I tried so hard to miss it. I cannot tell you how hard I tried. I was not online at all, and it was still in my face nonstop, which was good because actually
it was in your face nonstop in another country as a result of what?
I mean, I would occasionally just check in, check headlines or something, or I'd just scroll my emails and things. Yeah, it was just instantly there.
I just thought maybe for a second you're at some Outback bar and Crocodile Dundee walks in. Have you been paying attention to the American speaker ass fight?
I actually did. I had a couple of conversations with people where I was like, why are you telling me this? I like there because it's interesting. American politics is interesting. It was the same thing when I went to Norway too. People would come up and ask me like things that were happening now. And I'm like, I understand that Americans are incredibly solipsistic and we only know our own country. But like, I didn't realize quite how invested everybody else was in what was happening in our clown show capital.
There's probably a lot of reasons for that we could examine, but I do want to know what kind of things. Let's just, because you brought it up, I really want to know what you think about the Speaker of the House fight, and we'll get to like more into your trip, but like what things do Australians that you recall bring up when they bring up what subjects? I feel like it's always the same few subjects, but at the same time, with the current events and everything that's happening, it could be anything. So what do they say to you?
Well, I didn't actually have that many conversations, and I had like the handful that I had actually were people who were generally political in their own lives anyway. So they were kind of following what was happening here. And it was just sort of a like, there was just a general question of how much hope I have, which is the same question Americans ask me too. Like,
right.
Do you have any expectation of things getting at all better? Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just sort of a general friendly question. I don't think that everybody thinks I'm some magic 8-ball, but that is the question I get asked most. Just like, what hope do you have for the future? Which maybe is a pretty frightening question, actually. But that's the one.
I know that you and I are a little bit different. I'm more on a kind of optimistic and you're more, let's say, realistic. I mean, it's neither here nor there, but I do feel like there's a perspective worth being honest about, that things are better as a result of the midterm elections than they could have been.
Well, that's the problem, right? We are just so close to absolute utter devastation and collapse at any moment that it's just like every time you just clear another small hurdle, and it's like you can see that you still have a huge obstacle course in front of you. There's like, lions shooting fire out of their mouths, and there's just lava pouring down like a waterfall, and like you still have to dodge all of those. But every time you clear one small thing, you're just like, yes, all right, because you got past this potentially devastating thing, even though there's just like an absolute sea of devastation ahead of you. That's so like, yeah, great.
Man, we escaped that tornado, lightning storm.
Right. That's exactly right. We did. Right. It's about to hail like actual rakes from the sky, and the rakes are like cobras on each end of the spikes. But
horrible image of rakes raining upon you.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's okay because we escaped the tornado.
What are your thoughts about how long it took for them to elect a speaker? What did the extreme...
I wish it was still going on. I hate that they finally concluded. I wanted that to be the only thing that happened for 2 years. Just like 2 full years of just Kevin McCarthy walking up, getting a pie to the face, and like sitting back down calmly and being like, nope, next, we'll get them the next vote. Like, that's all I wanted to happen.
What was it because you were enjoying the kind of the humiliation of that he and others were suffering as a result of this extreme exercise?
I mean, obviously that's always enjoyable. Yeah. Watching your enemies suffer in any way is just pleasurable. Of course, yes, I would love the humiliation aspect. It's wonderful. It's also, just nice to see how incredibly weak and ineffectual they are, that there isn't anyone strong there really able to whip the votes and make that happen. That's just encouraging because, we're going to be faced with a long line of legislation that, isn't going to pass anyway because of the Senate and blah, 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 blah. But it's nice to know that they are in this kind of miserable place where they can't even get it together themselves. And hopefully, too, that can help change the narratives a little bit. We finally saw some of the like Republicans in disarray headlines, and all that stuff feeds into each other. So you kind of want to see that avalanche more. You want to see the media really playing up the divided elements of the Republican Party. You want to see that feeding back into the base. You want to see that empowering, some of the more moderate forces who really have felt that they've lost their party as of late, and see them feeling like maybe they can kind of move things a little bit more leftward. Like there's some potential there for some momentum that could be good.
What did you think of the way that they were so literally at each other's throats? I mean, at one point there was almost a squabble. Did you see that when the guy from behind the guy, he like grabbed onto his face? I'm really obsessed with that moment. Who does that?
It's a weird moment. Yeah.
When you're trying to pull a guy off, you don't put your hand in his face, but somebody told me maybe he was trying to cover his mouth because he was saying, but like, even then, I'm obsessed with like fights at the store or, in public. I watch all these at the game. I watch every one of these. Nobody ever like puts their hand over someone's mouth to prevent. It's a weird thing.
Honestly, that one just looked awkward to me. I only saw it the one time, so maybe it just looked like he was trying to grab him, but grabbed him wrong.
You watched it once?
Yeah.
Huh. Weird.
I've been mostly staying on I didn't care.
Why didn't you watch it 40 times?
I just decided that there was like other stuff in the world for me to see.
Oh, that's weird.
I know. It was strange. It's strange for me too. I don't understand.
I saw literally, I was at a store parked in the parking lot. I saw a baby choking. I did nothing. I just kept watching this video.
I thought you were saying you took a video of the baby choking and then just watched that over and over on a loop.
Oh my God, no.
Things got real dark here real quick.
No.
Yeah.
I like some suffering, but not babies choking. I'm just saying that's how obsessed I was with that video. Okay.
Gotcha.
And nothing gets done then. And maybe they can't even conduct their crazy investigations into Hunter Biden because they can't agree anything. And they hold the debt limit hostage and America defaults and horrible self-inflicted wound on our economy. Maybe some of those things, maybe none of them.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's been interesting to me right now has been seeing the aftermath when all of these, kind of the six or whatever are claiming some sort of victory, are like sort of in a like, see what we can do. And it's just like, you didn't do anything. All you did was prolong the same outcome that would have happened if you just all voted in the same way the first time. But they're sort of like acting as though they triumphed. See, we were able to shut something, but with actually no result. And that was interesting to me too, because they are claiming this victory with nothing to show for it. Makes me sort of interested to see how they see just sort of mucking up the works as a victory itself.
Right.
And frankly, that's fine for me. Like, I don't care. They can just cause chaos, but actually not achieve anything. That harms me in no way. They don't actually move forward any legislation. They just make everything take longer. Yeah, it's fine. Who cares?
Yeah. Lauren Boebert tweeted, if y'all thought that was good, just wait till we take the fight to Joe Biden and the radical left. And I thought, that's what I mean by like Earth 2 and Earth 1, like that wasn't good. It wasn't good for anybody. Yeah. The only thing that was good is that those Lauren Boeberts and Matt Gaetz, I guess, raised money every day. But that wasn't good for them in the long run. Maybe they raised money for those first few days, but they lost momentum. It was such a short game. And I just don't understand. If you thought that was good, nobody thought that was good. Republicans didn't think it was good. The rest of the country didn't think it was good. It wasn't good. So therein lies the different perspectives that we have. It wasn't good. How could you possibly think it was?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but that's the fun thing, too, is they obviously aren't doing anything. They have no intentions to do anything. They're just really worthless people, and they're incredibly dumb. And I don't mind watching them fall down the stairs just forever. I would watch that video. If I could actually watch them fall down the stairs, I would play that on a loop.
Okay, well, I want to talk to you about your trip. I have some notes from your year. I brought some notes. I have it here. We talk pretty regularly. I have it here that you went to 3 different countries in about the last year's time, and that you also went on a little retreat, like a 3-day retreat to Maine, like a yoga retreat. So I've got 4 trips.
I know. I sound really, really exciting. I sound like a really interesting person.
I got 4 trips. You're a divorced mother of 2 boys, young boys. Mm-hmm. You're very active, obviously, in their lives. You're a great mom and all that and everything. But because you are in that situation, you can do this and you should do this. One could argue it's a healthy choice. So you've gone on 4 trips, 3 of them out of the country. But this last one you just returned. Was really a big deal because it was such a long trip, a far away, exotic place, Australia. And so I just want to say, good for you. Good for you for taking these solo trips. I mean, you usually know people, or not always though. And I guess, your kids went with you to Norway, right? But still, good for you for taking these trips. I know you love travel, obviously. That'd be weird if you didn't. I hate travel. Yeah. Why do you keep going to other countries alone?
Actually, that sounds more like me. Like, oh, really? This is giving you no good benefit and you despise doing it, and yet you keep for some reason, habitually falling into it. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's how I feel about pizza. So how do you explain, what kind of person are you?
So that's, no big deal. Just a small question.
Is it that you love to travel? Is it that you love to meet new people, see new places? Is it that you love your kind of being alone?
Let's get one thing straight. I hate people. Okay. I just, no matter where I'm going.
Now, you hate people you don't know, most humans maybe or something, but there's people that you like and you go and you see them and they come and they see you.
That's true. That is true.
So
I will travel to see people I like, person I like. Yes. No, I mean, I do. I love traveling. But it's a lot of things. I don't normally travel as much as I have this past year. I always loved traveling. I never spent money on anything else. I would always if I could get just a small amount together, I would use it to go someplace. That has always been something that I cared about doing. And then, I had kids. And so they were young for a long time. Couldn't really do much. Couldn't ever really leave. And then I was incredibly broke through a lot of it, especially when they were in daycare and things like that. And then the pandemic, couldn't go anywhere. And I was also in relationships for periods of time with people who, for whatever reason, didn't want to or couldn't go anywhere one way or the other. And so it was always a feeling like I was abandoning them if I went somewhere. And all of these things kind of lined up to hit a sort of wonderful breaking point about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I was just I don't want to do that anymore. This has always been something that I cared about, and I'm not going to let things hold me back anymore. And because, I'm divorced and I have a great relationship with my kid's dad, we split time. So now I have some time that's just to myself. I took on a lot of freelancing work in the last couple of years. So I was able to save a little bit of extra money that, I was able to, that I absolutely should be doing, going to a doctor or saving for retirement. But instead I'm just oh, okay, that's a plane ticket. Go. I've gone with that sort of route. Maybe not the most responsible.
Let me just jump in there because I wonder about this. Do you ever think that you'll be an old lady saying, I wish I had more money so that I could do A, B, or C. I wish I had that $1,000, that $3,000 from that trip I took. I wish I didn't take that trip because it's really, in the scheme of things, it's really not that much money that you're spending on a trip that you would make. Do you ever think? I sometimes do think that way. I wonder if
I don't think I would ever. I would never ever think that. I've fully weighed all that out. One, who the hell knows how long we have to live?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I don't know.
But
yeah. So there's always a sense of what am I saving for? Two, who knows how long the world has to live? There's just a sense that it's all going to end soon anyway. So go do that thing. And then, I don't know, there's also another sense of I'll never have enough. I'll never be able to retire. I'll never have enough to just sort of, so what am I doing? What am I getting out of that? I don't, one extra ration of,
I think I'm generally in agreement with almost everything you said. And I don't think that's that normal. Maybe it's not that mature or smart, but I think it's kind of rational. Most of it is. And that's why we would both be terrible financial portfolio advisors. But
this is the other problem, I will say, though, is my dad worked in that industry as a financial advisor. Mm-hmm. And that's always been his kind of MO, too. It's just money is here to be spent. It's not, that's the point. The point is to live your life. And I mean, again, I don't spend money on other things.
If this is too personal, or does he ever interfere? Maura, it seems like you're not saving enough for retirement.
Oh, yeah. He says that to me all the time.
Right.
No, he was telling me he hoped I was maxing out my 401k. I'm to max out my 401k, I'd literally have to be earning more than I even earn. Right. And all of it would have to go to maxing out. That's not even, what are you talking about? No.
Wrong job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like, look, if you want me to have retirement, work harder and die, and then give me an inheritance. Like,
I think that's a more responsible, mature.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're worried about me as a parent, then I don't see you squirreling away a trust fund for me here.
Right.
Get on it. That's how you show that you care.
You think he should work harder still right now? Like, get a side hustle.
That's right. Yeah, he's in his 70s and he only has one job. Come on. Who gets to just have one job anymore?
Is your dad still full-time working?
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I have no expectation of retiring.
Yeah, I don't really either. I'm not sure what that would look like or how I necessarily could.
It sounds amazing, but this is my, I think I'm not the only one who has this dream of the cabin in the woods, right? Where you just run away and
no, I'm freaking reading
land.
Thoreau right now. Look how I'm dressed. I'm in a shed. But I think
you do look like someone who's reading Thoreau right now.
I am.
For the viewers at home, yeah.
But can I live? The only thing I think I need money for in the future is, I wouldn't want some awful suffering, physical or suffering that if I only had a little more money for better healthcare, I'd be a little better off. But I don't really see that being my sitch. I would want to have more money if my kids were in a jam so I could give them more money. But other than that, I can find ways to get all I need is a season pass at the ski mountain and a small cabin
and then you're just going to Sunny Bono yourself, and it's and then it's over.
No, I'm amazing. I'll never be injured on the slopes.
No. I was assuming that you were talking about your own suicide. No, that's my.
I don't know why.
Eventually,
no, that's my paradise. It's just Jesus, you morbid fuck. I just want to ski.
Well, it's very cheap to die. It's actually not. It's not even cheap to die.
I just want to. It is. Yeah, right. I just know. I mean, it will be for me. By the way, the idea that my daughters would incur any expenses, some people are so poor. Like when my grandma passed away, I think my mom and her siblings chipped in her expenses to cover whatever was left. But
people have
compost me. What are we doing?
I know, but there's always fees. Even if you're a Potter's Field type, there's there's money.
Yeah, you got to get a license. You got to pay for a license.
The state will take its share. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I would love to have that conversation with more people about just the future and what do you need? What are your needs? If you don't have some expensive taste, and even then you can get around things. I don't know. So
no, it's entirely, it's all about healthcare. It's all about just how can you afford to live, assuming that you are going to face various medical problems, because of course you are, right? That's your body's going to fall apart. You're going to need help. And that's definitely going to happen. That's the thing. But given the state of our healthcare at this point, how can you possibly have enough money to ever cover that?
Well, what do you think of this? I read one of those year-end, one of those silly, sappy, motivational kind of do these things in your life. And one of the things I read caught me. I was like, treat your body like you treat your house. Take good care of your house.
Oh, that's terrible. That would not work for me. Actually, that's really perfect because it is just a mess inside. It's just, I just throw things everywhere. Little bouts of things being really clean and really taken care of, and then other times when it's where did that pile come from? That's not great.
How sad is it that I know you so well that I was definitely setting you up for the joke with that metaphor?
Yeah.
I think that's a good one because trying to take care of yourself as much as you can means probably less maintenance towards the end, and not to blame anybody who has any kind of issue. That's what I was going to say.
That's the hope, but you are so not you're in control of what you're in control of, but so much is out of your control.
Absolutely,
and there's no way. I mean, I think we all know some people who are just in peak physical health who suffered terrible heart attacks and died in their 40s. We know people who have, just been absolutely trashed themselves and are still kind of, they're
just
still smoking.
Won't die.
Just won't die. It's they just ingested so many preservatives that they've completely pickled themselves into
it's like my
mortality.
My uncle's in the best shape ever, died of leukemia when he was 61, and he was a great guy. And Donald Trump does nothing for himself, and he is a horrible person, and he's still alive.
Well, hate is really good. Hate will motivate you for a long time.
Yeah,
it's a good engine. We should find a way to harness that.
I wonder if there's a way to study such a thing.
How hate keeps you going? Yeah.
more than some other.
I mean, but when you think about it, think of how much energy it takes to hate. Like, this is why I don't really hate anyone. I don't have the strength for it. But like, if you work out that muscle all the time, you've got some real intense strength.
I get it. I have too often. It's not a healthy thing. I'm
super fucking weak. My hate muscle is like, it's like watching someone just hang from a pull-up bar, and you can see that they're trying, but they're literally not moving at all.
That's good.
That's me.
That's a good trait. That's a good quality. So
I guess, except I'm going to die because I don't have that. I don't have that fueling me further.
Better to live without hate than live with it. I think it's a terrible emotion and feeling. And it's just so. I hate it. I hate hating people, and so I'm trying not to. But I put them in my meditations. The people I hate sometimes. It's brutal. It makes me
put people you hate in your meditation.
I think about the people I hate and try to have compassion for them.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like you meditate on like, I hope you die. Oh, no. I want you to suffer. Like, and just sit there.
Enough about your guided meditations.
That actually, then I would meditate. Now I'm interested.
Wait, can you physically pound someone while you're meditating? I wish I hadn't sound pound. Okay. So did you see the thing about, by the way, Matt Schlapp, the head of CPAC conservative, he assaulted somebody in a car and the man accused him of pummeling his genitals. Did you see this?
No, I didn't. I saw people talking about Matt Schlapp. See, this is just it. I have not really been online. It's been amazing.
It's great. It's just great because Matt Schlapp is a terrible person, and the idea that he would be gay is bad for his brand, I guess. So it's great. And it's also no surprise. But pummeling my genital, it's I don't even understand what that sexual assault looks like. I'm not sure why that word was used. Pummeling.
That was a sexual assault? Because to me, that just sounds like an assault that, I don't know, like... Okay, I have no idea. But the man's name is Matt Schlapp, so like there was nothing good that was going to come in his life.
And Matt and Mercedes Schlapp, that's his wife's name.
Oh God.
Okay, so Australia, huh? What did you learn?
Yeah. What did I learn? It was really hard being in Australia because the entire time I was there, like I knew that I had traveled so far, I'd been on so many planes, I'd done so much, and then I get off the plane and I'm like walking around and everyone speaks English. Like that alone, I'm just like, how did I go this far? Did I go all the way around the globe? Like, am I back where I started? And especially because I've never traveled anywhere and not heard Australian accents. Like they're everywhere. So it's not weird to hear Australian accents. That didn't ground me anywhere. So I'm like, okay, everything's in English. I'm just hearing the normal accents. I'm like walking around a city. I kept having to remind myself, okay, you are in a different hemisphere. Like you are completely different place, because there was very little to like remind me of that while I was just sort of existing there. I just felt like I was in a city I hadn't been in before. And it was a bit strange, but I'll tell you where I was like, okay, all right, I'm not in the States anymore. It was driving on the highway and you look out the window and of course there's like roadkill. And I was like, oh, that's a kangaroo. Okay. Now I'm not in the U.S. The roadkill here is a kangaroo.
You saw a dead kangaroo on the side of the road like a dead deer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was like, okay, we're someplace different.
Oh, they're dumb too, huh? They don't know how to look both ways either. I thought they were smarter.
No, all these animals. No, they're all.
I thought marsupials were smarter.
Really? I don't know why you thought that.
Why are 2 of the 3 Australian animals that we all can name marsupials? Do they more likely live in the southern hemisphere? I'm thinking of...
You know that I didn't actually like study Australia, right? Like I just went and drank a lot.
I just want to talk about marsupials. Okay. So what else? Was there any other cultural, not shock, but like stark differences in terms of anything from food to music to people to behavior? Did you see
everything was better. That was a little bit jarring. Everything was better.
What do you mean?
Hold on. Better.
Was everything better because you were away on vacation, or was it like measurably like country, better?
I think it was actually better.
Okay.
I mean, like, obviously that's not true, right? Like, obviously there's plenty of places of any country that are just as bad or terrible or whatever. And, and I was certainly specifically going to places that I would, enjoy or that I thought would be nice. But like, no, I mean, just the food was better. I was like, you know what? It reminded me a lot in general of California. A lot of the places that I were, a lot of the places that I went to. But also in the way that like there was a lot of the food was very fresh, and there was a lot of different sort of influences on a lot of the things that I was eating, and a lot of very like local stuff. And it was just nice. It was just very nice. The whole time was just incredibly nice. I just enjoyed it. And people in general seemed pretty friendly, which was cool. It was actually, this was like something I noted because I've traveled a fair amount, and you notice how you move through the world and how people respond to you moving through the world. And it changes, like there's just cultural differences, and it changes from place to place. It even changes in the US, like in the way that we say, in LA, people will be like fake and friendly, but they don't really care. In New York, everyone seems real gruff, but they'll actually help you out. Like, just different places have different sort of vibes to them in the way that people are. And I noticed that I've traveled to so many places where like smiling can be questionable. Like people don't necessarily respond better to you when you smile.
That's a definitely regional and cultural thing. And so this was interesting to me, was that I like instantly noted people were just they would just treat me so much better the moment I smiled, which was like a very American thing to me. Like I was used to that being the way things are in a lot of places in the States, but not often when I travel outside of the States. Maybe it's because you're there during Australian summer, and we haven't smiled since November 3rd or something. It's people smile, the strangers smile in the winter in cold areas. I feel like smiling is to some extent like, the weather's good. Hey, how are you?
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, it was also like, very bright, and the sun was out till 9:00. And so, people just generally may have been happier because they had like vitamin D and they were out in the world and did not, want to die.
And a good time, a good time of year. It's their summer. It's just begun, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was full summer. I mean, I landed on Christmas Day, which was kind of fun. I went to the beach in Sydney, and it was like insanely packed, and it was just everyone in like bikinis with Santa hats, and like it was just a really fun little moment in time. But
before we let you go, let's talk about that one deep personal thing that you said we could, which I think is interesting and really an important discovery that I bet a lot of people can relate to. You said that you feel like you've made kind of this important discovery that when meeting new men in relationships, one of the things that you really realize that you like is a lot of the things about their lives, maybe their job often. You've dated a few band bookers, which you think is a really cool job. You could see yourself kind of doing that kind of thing, or just where they live or how they live. It's more about kind of their life than it is them. How did I do it describing that? Pick it up from there.
Well, that was sort of, that was not bad, but I was sort of reminiscing on like a whole stint of people, and that there's in general had very little in common, except that the one common element that I could pull through was that there was something that I was like, I don't want to say envious about or jealous about, but something about their life that made me go, oh, wow, you can do that? Like, that's a viable way to live? Like, that is inspiring to me. That's something I want. Like, that's, something that appeals to me that I never saw as necessarily in the grasp of reality, because I've always kind of had this like view of having to have a certain type of job or a certain live a certain way. And so, I've noticed that I've dated a long string of people who have lives who have like structured them in ways that I didn't really know I didn't know we could do that. And
but
it's sort of exciting.
But you admire that you like
that I would like. Yeah. That I kind of wish I wish I'd seen like I'm not saying like, oh, it's too late for me or anything like that, but I do kind of wish that like at 19, 20, I had seen that as a viable path and had sort of maybe made some different choices. I have no regret whatsoever. I'm very happy with where I wound up, but I do think if I had known that was possible or had a little more faith or confidence in it, I probably would have gone a bit of a slightly different way in the
Can you see yourself being of all things considered, you see yourself being with someone in a relationship, more serious relationship where because of some of those things and that being a good balance for you?
Yeah, well, it's worked so far for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, even down to like, I've been married and I really think, my kid's dad, who I really get along with now and stuff, but like he was a musician, and that's not a skill set I've ever had, except that I have this like purely based in nothing fantasy that if I could just magic power myself into something, I would make myself a singer. Like that's what I would do. I'd make money just singing. And so like just seeing someone who had made this choice to go pursue music as a viable career option was like amazing to me. And I wanted to be near that.
Yeah.
And that, I think I've seen a lot of that. And it does. I do enjoy it because I find it I find it inspiring, and it excites me. I like it.
I think that's important discovery, and I wonder what people think when they hear that. Because I heard you say it, I was like, yeah, that's really the very interesting and important discovery to be aware of and to notice. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm very profound, actually.
Congratulations!
I don't know if you know that. Super deep.
Oh, we think that. Yeah. We think that. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're back. So how was your How was the travel? I know that you were talking on social media, but your bag is your bag lost? Is it?
It's gone. They have no idea where it is. They have no idea. They're like, I got a call yesterday saying your bag is not in South Korea, which I think is like, that's an interesting way to do it. I assume they're just going to go one by one through every country in the world and just like, okay, your bag is not in Italy. Your bag is not in Thailand. Like,
they just told you where your bag wasn't.
They know it's not in South Korea.
Is it? I was thinking about that when I saw you tweet. I was like, well, I didn't say who cares. I was like, well, not that big a deal to lose your bag on the way home, because you don't have to go shopping for all new clothes and toiletries, et cetera, or whatever you need. But if you lose it on the way to vacation, you've brought a specific set of things. So it's a lot worse if you're going to a place versus home. Is that a fair assumption in your situation, or was there?
It is. I've only ever had my bag lost twice, and the other time was when I was traveling to Italy. This is like 20 years ago, and they lost it on the way there. But it was kind of fun because Alitalia, the airline, gave me like a, hey, sorry, we lost your bag. Here's some stuff you might need for the next 2 days. And I loved that what they thought I needed was toothpaste and toothbrush. Cool. Yep. I think they gave me like a little bar of soap. Cool. A giant white t-shirt. I guess I'm just going to wear that. And then condoms. And I was like, what do you think I have planned for the next 2 days?
Well, I don't want to top you, but I basically saved a plane when a guy went crazy. And I, with a couple of other passengers, I've told the story many times, restrained a person who was mentally ill and violent. And what I got for that was a toiletry kit with all hair care products.
Okay, there's so many elements of this. One, they had something ready to go. Like, here's your award.
No. It was like a couple weeks later, they sent me like a note, like, thank you very much for your...
Oh, they thought about it. They thought about it and sent it.
I looked like I do now. No hair.
I think that maybe they assume that the next person you have to restrain might have, like, this might be helpful to him.
Maybe that's what it was.
Who knows what you can do with a comb?
And
deadly.
The last thing I want to ask you, unless there's anything else about your travel that you want to share, but like on the way there and on the way home, you didn't make publicly or privately to me any kind of big deal about traveling for 26 hours on a plane. And I really admired that and thought it was kind of an interesting quality. But like, I even give you the opportunity as I am now, and you're like, yeah, whatever. Yeah,
it's a choice, right? Like, I didn't have to or get forced into it. I didn't it's not as though someone, held me hostage and made me go through this. I actively was like, I'm going to go as far away as I can possibly go. And I'm going to go as cheaply as I can go. And that means traveling it was actually 54 hours of travel. If you go start from when I left the hotel to when I got to my house, I made that choice, and I don't regret it. I would do it again. So how can I complain about it?
Because I can. But what did you do the way there and way back? Did you knock yourself out?
I'm not good at that. I can't sleep anywhere. I took some NyQuil on one of the long flights. I tried, and I go in and out. Like on the way there, basically what I did was sit with myself and think through every terrible possible thought I could have, and then just wrestle. I basically tried to cram in like 20 years of therapy into like one long flight. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. I'm just stuck here with myself. Like, all right.
Horrible.
Yeah, really bad. But I was like, no. I'm gonna come out of this, and I'm just gonna like.
You're the only person on that flight.
Mentally tough.
All that turbulence started. You're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, all right, please, anything to take to just end this right now.
Oh,
and
God.
then on the way back, I was much more like, okay, I'll just. Yeah, I read a book. I read a whole book. I watched a couple movies. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did. Read a book, watched a movie, and then started another book. Even actually got through like 2 books.
Very impressed. Very impressed. Well, I hope you get your stuff.
I did a lot of meditating. I just sat there going, I hope everyone dies. And it was really calming.
Probably not the most suggested meditation if you want to take it.
It worked for me. Okay.
I can't wait for your self-guided meditations to come out.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going to start doing.
Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. And now imagine a fiery storm of lava raining down on your town.
God, that sounds amazing. I'm calm already. You're going to put me to sleep.
Well, hey, thank you very much for talking to me. As always, I really, really appreciate it. I'm so glad you're back safe and sound, that you had a great trip, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, there she goes. Ladies and gentlemen, Maura Quint at Behind Your Back and all the social medias. Check the links on the show notes for both her and Dr. Ruth Ben-Ghiat. And that is what I've got for you on today's episode of Stand Up. Tomorrow, I am scheduled to have on the show Harlem Grown's Tony Hillary, the founder of Harlem Grown, this urban gardens educating young people in New York City. It's so great. What a great project. I visited it. He's awesome. I am scheduled to talk to him. Hopefully it goes great. We'll get that on Tuesday, along with the first installment of the Stand Up Gen Z guests. I'm trying to talk to some young people between 19 and 25. And tomorrow my guest will be Lucy Solomon, who is a freshman at American University and a daughter of a friend of mine. If you have a Gen Z son, daughter, friend, student, I don't know, you know somebody that is really passionate, intelligent, and articulate, vulnerable, honest, and cool, hopefully maybe funny, I don't know, doesn't any of those criteria, let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com, or any other guest suggestions that you want, send them over to my email. If you're a subscriber, join us in the Discord and on Thursday nights at our hangouts, which are always awesome. All right, that's it. That's all I've got for you. Be the change you want to see in the world. John Carroll, sing us out. johncarroll.org. Go buy the song right now. Support him, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Red and brown, she's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, to make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it than now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand come on, stand.